You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello and welcome to Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's longest running business talk. We are having a little bit of technical issues here on my side, but hopefully that is working now and you can hear us okay. I'm excited to have our show today because we have a great guest. Clint Graham, who is the co-founder for JointCommerce, is our guest. Clint, welcome to the program.
Happy to be here, Rick.
So let's get right into it. I said you're the co-founder. I love to have people who start business because, in my opinion, it's the hardest thing to do in business, create a business. So what was the original motivation for you, your other founders, to launch your firm?
Yeah, the motivation for us was really driven by the realization, right, that the cannabis industry, where we as a tech company function and primarily serve, had a need for digital advertising solutions and platforms that could really help businesses drive online sales and drive new customer acquisition. So, we saw an opportunity to leverage our skill set, to leverage our experience in tech, and really help these cannabis businesses really grow and thrive within a very challenging landscape, as we all know. So that was the motivation for us.
So I love it when entrepreneurs have a niche, especially in the early days, because you can't boil the ocean.
Yeah.
You got to be really focused.
Yeah.
So how did this industry come to your attention?
For those listening, I was born and raised in Jamaica. Not that we are going to stereotypically connect cannabis, or as you in the Caribbean say, ganja, to Jamaicans. But, I've always been familiar. I've had family members in the past who have a very intricate relationship with cannabis, right? I think most people know it as just pot you smoke, but there's a ton of different uses for cannabis, a lot of health reasons and benefits. And so I've always been on the peripheral of cannabis. And I think it caught my attention, obviously, once legalization started to take place. Seeing the rhetoric and the need for standardization and the opportunity. So, it's always been there. The timing just coincided that it was right to get involved. I've been in the industry now for about 5 years. Got my initial baptism by fire at Weedmaps, which is a pretty well-known tech platform in the industry, and had a great experience there and learned a lot. That kind of started this deep look into what really are businesses asking for, the help they need. That's in a very challenging industry to begin with.
So I'm wondering, what have you or you together with your other co-founders, what have you learned since starting the business?
Man, we've learned a lot, right? But I think the most important thing, right, is you have to balance your personal drive and desire and vision with the reality of what it is you're undertaking, right? And so I think for us, what we've learned very early on is that it's okay to not get it right off the bat, that it is about the journey, and that you have a vision, right? That you have a goal that you're working towards, and your customers have trust and confidence in you working towards that goal, is what's important, right? And I think the challenges of the cannabis industry creates this universal bond, right, with businesses and with business owners, because it's difficult to operate, right? It's not for the faint of heart by any means. But if you can rely on others because someone has gone through what you've gone through, and, our industry is about community. And so, if you can tap into that community, you'll realize it's okay to not get it right on the first go, but it's the work and effort towards that vision.
I think that's really powerful because we can spend too long planning, and there's some things you don't learn until you start doing and get into action and minimum viable product, whatever the right acronym or phrase is for the different industries. But I agree with you. But I'm wondering, have you had any major or minor pivots in the business model since you launched?
So the model remains the same. I think there have been pivots within that model in terms of the tech we implement, some of the resources we access. A lot of what we're doing and partners we're working with, it's new for them in this industry. And so, for them, it's almost like baptism by fire in cannabis. And so obviously with that, there's a lot of compliancy that you have to adhere to. There's a lot of processes that you have to implement. And at times those can hinder scale, right? Those can hinder how fast you can grow, how fast you can execute, how fast you can activate certain things. And so while it may be the best solution at the time, right, and it looks amazing, if those things, if you can't scale and you can't activate and you're not fluid and flexible for your customers, then it's not the right fit. And so you now have to pivot, which we have, in finding a better solution that will serve the need of our company. And thankfully, the higher powers, if you will, definitely favored us, where we are now in a better place from that pivot than if we just tried to stay with it and figured it out, right? We would have wasted time. To your point, it's about, hey, this is what's in front of us. Let's make the decision and be very thoughtful about that decision. And it's worked out that pivot is put us in a better place.
I'm always curious with you founders of early stage companies, because there's this tension I've heard between staying with your core vision and listening to the signals from the marketplace, because some of it might be noise. So, and when you're not the sole decision maker, I'm sure there were times, Clint, where you and the rest of your team had to debate a little bit the pivots that you made to really make sure you weren't just chasing a shiny object necessarily.
Yeah. If those debates are not happening, you're in trouble, right? Those, I think, need to happen throughout the lifespan or the maturity of a company, because it means there's a healthy conversation about balancing where we go. Because what we're really talking about in that scenario is, are we truly customer centric or are we product centric? Are we building something then we're going to convince people to buy it, or
right.
Are we listening to what is needed and then pivot accordingly? And I think, within our industry, it's a very unique, amazing industry, because, we still believe the cannabis and the weed will sell itself, right? It's like, hey, if it's weed, it's like people will buy it. This is the simplest business model on the planet.
Right.
But with the advent of, bigger corporations that have experience in CPG and QSR, we all know that's not the case. Like Amazon does not believe that their product will just automatically fly off the shelf, right? There's strategies that need to be implemented that shows value for the consumer, right? So how does this product enhance your life, makes your life better? And I think in our industry, that's missing to some degree. And so we try to help our partners along to be like, yes, the product is great, it is amazing, but we have to consider the consumer's lifestyle and how you make that better, because that is how you create true acquisition, true fans of a product, right? People who drink Coke will never drink Pepsi. That's just me. If Pepsi's on the tap, forget it. Not drinking it. I will be thirsty until I get to a Coke somewhere. But that's based on true development work over time by Coke to provide that value to me. And I bought into it. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, with the challenges of cannabis in our industry, time is our greatest enemy, right? You don't have enough of it because you don't have the resources to give you that time to build that customer, to build that relationship. And so you have to get as much return as quickly as possible. And that is where we're trying to fulfill that need, right? It's like, how do we help you drive that sale, drive that acquisition in a short amount of time? There are challenges within that, but that is our core goal there.
So let's take it apart a little bit, the cannabis industry, because, I said earlier, I really applaud entrepreneurs like yourself who have a niche, because you can focus and get momentum easier, my experience from what I've heard and seen here over the years. But the the truth is the cannabis industry is really a fragmented, there's a lot of elements even within that industry. And so I'm wondering, could you share with us, within the niche, who do you help? What problems are you solving for them? And how are they finding you, and why are they choosing your firm?
Yeah. So, our customer base are typically brands in retail. And so retail meaning dispensaries and delivery businesses, and brands meaning all the brands that occupy the space that said dispensaries and deliveries carry on their shelves. So that's our focus. We can do ancillary things like, a lighting company, but it's very hard in our industry based on data availability, targeting availability to do sort of that B2B. It can be done, but it's a little bit more challenging and requires more time. But primarily we are serving cannabis brands in retail, which are dispensaries and deliveries. And so what we are in that space, and why we are, proving to be valuable, right? Because it's a process, right? We believe in proving our worth and proving our value by how we execute and the results we produce. So JointCommerce is really a fully managed service that runs digital advertising, focused on scaling a brand or retail's awareness with the right customer towards measurable online sales. So our focus within the niche of cannabis is even more challenging. Is like, we are here to solely help you drive sales. And we're going to show you how you're driving sales and the ROI you're generating from that, and help you understand the customers you're acquiring from that. And within that, have a conversation around strategic direction, insight. What does, a new customer really look like? Is there such a thing as a new customer in cannabis, right? It's a value-based industry. So it might be new for you, but it's not new for that person, or the customer could be on that, value tour, I call it, right? So you patronize one service to get their first time 30% off. And you get his 40% off. Now 30 days has passed for the first guy. You go to the other guy to get his 25. So now to the first guy, you are a lapsed consumer. So now you're potentially new. So when you make the turnaround again, you can take advantage of his 40%. That's our industry, right? And so, having the conversation around what does new and returning really mean is where we find value to our customers, because we're so focused on driving that sale and return for you.
Earlier you used the classic Coke versus Pepsi analogy. And as you were talking about your niche, I'm thinking, where are the brands in that space? Is it the dispensary? Is it the MedMen? Who's creating the brand awareness? Is it the producer of the flower who has their line that's on display and for sale inside the dispensary? From your experience, who's doing the best job establishing brand awareness with the cannabis consumer? And do you think long-term that's going to be the brands that are known in that industry, or do you see a change over time?
There are a few brands that are pretty known. California is fortunate because, there's some pretty awesome brands, dope brands that are known that are coming out of the state. Stizzy comes readily to mind. Cookies come readily to mind when you go to other states. You hear these names. And then there are others, Can, the beverage, those guys have done a lot of great work in driving awareness. I think the overall challenge of the industry with brands and the relationship with retail, again, dispensaries and deliveries, is that brands and time, remember time being our greatest enemy, we don't have it to build. So brands have a difficult time storytelling and informing. And so you get into this very low funnel, 20% off, but you're not educating anyone on anything. And so brands now have to rely on the retail infrastructure to tell that story, but a retail infrastructure is not necessarily concerned with your brand story, more so to move you off the shelf as quickly as possible. And so the relationship as it exists is brand, let's leech onto the dispensary audience and try to get with a customer to be part of the basket, right? And so now you have brands evaluating, well, I like this relationship. It's not probably the best for me, but can I do this myself? So direct to consumer is a very hot topic in our industry.
Okay.
It is a consideration by most, but again, within that lane, it's a realization of like, how long does it take if I'm going to do it myself?
Right.
Get the scale and awareness to know that I am doing it myself, and then to build the audience, a customer base, because you're building your own customer base. Remember, dispensary retail, you can take advantage of their existing customer base because you're just trying to be part of the basket size. Now you're trying to be the entire basket size. And so you're trying to convince someone who normally would buy a little bit of this, a little bit of that, they can do to now solely buy your product. And so, what does that look like? How much do you price that to be? Like, do you have SKU diversity? Like, all of these things come into play, but the relationship as it stands between brands and retail is always an ongoing discussion. But in any case, storytelling and customer development isn't taking place as it normally would in another industry. I always tell cannabis brands, like, look, Kleenex spends roughly $2 million alone in the space we occupy. And I don't remember the last time anyone calls tissue. It's always Kleenex. So if Kleenex decided never to I think we would still call tissue Kleenex. Hand me a Kleenex.
Right.
So if they see the need, but they've spent, they know they need to continuously, because there's a new generation every time, right? It's always a rolling, you can never stop. But they have the time to do that because you're not challenged by legislation, local government, all of the things we know about the industry.
And that is, I think, part of the challenge, and probably what you're helping your clients to navigate, is that's a heavily regulated and controlled distribution space. It's not like selling Kleenex, because there's a lot of interest in making sure that it's done within certain parameters, which also then puts constraints probably on your brands and what they are able to do and how they can actually reach the consumer. So shifting our focus a little bit, Clint, over the years, you've probably been given advice. Some of it's been great, some of it maybe not so much, but do you have any business advice that has really worked for you and as you've scaled your business that you would like to share with my audience?
Yes. Customer centricity is pivotal for success. Pivotal. Because if you're not listening to the customer, right, you run the risk of building something that they don't need entirely, right? And that's where I kind of went to the whole, like, people believe the weed will sell itself versus how does that fit in the consumer's lifestyle? How does it make the consumer lifestyle? I always chuckle at the Steve Jobs quote that I think everyone knows, right? He built the iPhone. He's like, they don't know they need it yet, right? We'll build it and then we'll tell them. That probably worked back then, but with changing society, changing norms, millennials, Gen Z, or whatever's coming behind, you need to listen to what it is that they're asking for and pivot accordingly. So every decision we make needs to be rooted in, how does this help the customer? It's no longer about, hey, we'll build this product and then we'll convince them why they should buy it, because you can't scale that. And you may get to a point where it's like, this is it. I think a lot of companies feel like we need to build something, man. Like, I think, financial analysts will tell you hit a curve, then you have to innovate and build something else for it to keep going up. And that is fine. But I think in such a niche environment, if you build something that delivers some consistency and reliability, that will automatically happen, because it will be an influx of new people coming in saying, hey, I hear what you've done for X. We'd like the same thing. Let's go.
It really seems that you're at a pivotal time in the industry, because there will be ultimately a shakeout where there will be the Coke and the Pepsi and brands that people have become attached to. Because if you go into a dispensary now, it is such a fragmented space between wanting flower and maybe you want digestibles. Maybe you want to vape it. There's so many options. If someone isn't sure or is just sort of figuring out, it's sort of a kid in a candy store in a way, and that's where the dispensary can guide you. But also, if you can be reached by the producer, you may come in predefined or predisposed, at least within certain parameters, which is a great opportunity for you.
And that's a key point, because the dispensary environment, and I may catch some flack for this, it is for brands, it's a pay-to-play environment.
Okay.
To your point, if I am a curious guy coming in, it's like going to Starbucks, standing behind the person who orders the whip, and you are looking at the menu going, where on the menu is that product? I just want a large coffee.
Right.
Forget what is that, Friends, or like one of the episode that had that. And so if you're curious and you go into a dispensary, it is overwhelming.
Yes.
If you do not know, and if you're like, I just want something to help me sleep.
Yes.
A bud tender in that scenario will only refer to you brands who have said, hey, push this particular product. So are you really getting an objective feedback, right? It's not like pharmacy where it's like, here, what are your symptoms? Okay, here you go.
Right.
So, that world for brands need to control, because you can target the people you want to explain what it is you provide or the value you give them, and then drive that person in to purchase.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to do, right?
Well, that's great, because more and more you can do it online. Yes. You can do it and just pick it up. So then you've disintermediated the bud tender from the decision making, if you can decide what you want before you walk in. It's the Wild West, right? The industry you're in right now.
And brands should control their story.
Yes.
You built it, designed it, curated it, manufactured it, and it's tough to let retail now dictate how that is communicated. Like, you can say all you want, hey man, make sure you put the product in this slide, or you say this, but ultimately once you have that sell-in, hey, you're now sitting back waiting for another buy or another sell-through or something, right? Like your role is ended once it's out, it's in the dispensary.
And again, I'll just say, Clint, in my opinion, and I'm just an outside observer, it seems like there's going to be that opportunity where the major brands will figure out how to create that brand awareness, and that will change the game from a buying pattern. So the work that you're doing is critical, because it's strategic for them to be one of the few brands that'll probably be standing in the end. They'll be the lion's share of the business. Pareto will take over.
And make it measurable in transparent form, right? So
you
see the return, so you can accurately say, okay, this is what you said you were going to do. Here's the results. That makes sense. What are the insights? Okay, let's have a conversation. Now you're in a place where you can make better decisions as a business, from marketing, even though it's not going to be a game changer, because no one's going to spend enough money to like revolutionize or get the large, but it can provide a snapshot that you can weight against your business to make decisions, right? Okay, the feedback is this, the results is this, or I know I'm selling this much. If I extrapolate that to how much this is where I should be. These are conversations you can now have, and what we're trying to help our partners have. And it's just how is marketing providing me a window into the consumer? Most people don't think of it that way. They just think of it as, man, I didn't sell anything, but we're providing you a window into the consumer you're serving and helping you understand and curate the best person to buy from you, or the best person who's buying your stuff. That's who this person is.
That sounds like magic. Frankly,
I'm trying. I have my wand around here, so I was
he's a wizard, ladies and gentlemen. Just a co-founder.
I'm on. It's funny you say that, because now I'm on like Hogwarts TikTok. For a lot of people listening, they'll realize what I'm talking about. But now I'm on Hogwarts TikTok.
So, how do you see the future? What's your vision for the firm?
So my vision, is pretty simple, and I repeat this over and over to the team and to anyone we work with. Look, we're trying to become the preferred digital advertising partner for customers, or for the industry, that delivers consistency and reliability. If you talk to anyone in cannabis, consistency and reliability are like very hard commodities to come by. And I think that alone allows us to focus on what we build, how we communicate, how we pivot, as long as it's delivering something that's consistent and reliable in the results we're giving. I think that'll allow us to kind of really scale at an exponential rate. But we're building it right now to get to that.
So if someone wants to connect with you, maybe on LinkedIn, or learn more about the firm, where do you say they go?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Clint Graham. I'll accept everything. And then, I'm on Instagram as well. I have, my handle is Yardie Weed, YARDIE Weed. So that combines being Jamaican and weed together. So I thought I was being clever with my there.
I'm sure you are. You appear to be very clever, Clint. And I want to thank you for giving us a little bit of your time and sharing your insights. It's been so interesting for me, and I'm sure for our audience. Thank you.
No, thank you. This was great. And yeah, and please reach out, anyone. Clint Graham on LinkedIn, DM. I'm always open for a good conversation about strategy and customer acquisition and just making people money, right? That's what we're trying to do.
Lovely. And let's thank the audience. You've been a part of Orange County's longest running business talk show. Clint's episode is episode number 1421 in our catalog. If you're an Orange County entrepreneur and you have a story to tell, who doesn't? If you're an entrepreneur, what a story. Yeah. Then reach out to me. I'm Rick, RIC, Franzi, FRANZI, and put you on a future episode of Critical Mass Business Talk Show. We'd love to have you as a guest. Until the next time we have a chance to be together, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.